Welcome to the Tech Byte on Teacher Portal and Skill Grades Editor. I'm Beth Elliott, and today we're going to be going over how to enter grades, and specifically skill grades, in the Teacher Portal. So we have logged in as a teacher. If need be, the teacher can change what school they're at. If they are, say, a specials teacher, an art teacher that is teaching at multiple elementaries, then you have the option to change that. You can also change what class you're working in. So I'm going to go from my math class to my reading. And at this point, I can go into skill grades and go to the View Enter Skill Grades area. Under here, there are 3 ways to enter the grades. We're going to start by doing the student grid. In here, I have the ability to go in and enter for a student. When I click on the pencil in front of the student's name, it's going to give me a list of the skills related to the course that I'm in this case reading, and an area where I can enter the grade. Now in this case, the first, second, or third, or fourth grade that's showing here is which grade of the year it is and not the grade level of the student. So what I'm going to do is I can see what grade they had in the first marking period, and I can at this point just drop the list to see what they are at the second marking period. And in this case, I can just pick from the list, and depending on the skill depends on the list of grades I'm going to see. Now in that case, I just dropped the list and I entered it, but I can also right-click here and say I want to view select from the allowed skill grades. The advantage of doing that is I get to see the level and what the description is that goes with it. So I'd see that 3 is my 3rd grade level. I would highlight it and save it. Now, if I do the same thing for uses phonetic clues, when I look at the view select for allowed grades for this one, I get a different set. So I'm going to have a plus sign for the strength in a particular area. I have a square bracket, a CK, for satisfactory progress in an area, and 2 dashes for a weakness in an area. Now this bracket CK is actually going to print as a check mark on my skills report card. So that makes it nice to be able to put that in. So I'm going to select that and save. And I can continue doing that for each of my classes or each of the students. I can also right-click here and I can print the allowed skill grades. So that's going to very nicely give me a list of what these are. Now at this point, I can go straight to the printer, or I can export to either a PDF, a text, comma, separated value, or comma delimited file, or into Excel. So it does give me that option. When you go to hit the export at this point, depending on what your browser settings are, depends on whether or not you're going to get the option to save the file and where. Some of them, they only do it where it goes straight into your downloads area. Others, you can set it up so that you can say which way you'd like to work with it. Now it does say print allowed standard grades, but it isn't specifying per se that this is the one for this particular area. So I might want to label that it's the group SUBG versus the one before, which was my grade level. So I might want to label it a little differently. So I'm going to cancel out of here and not save it, and I'm just going to hit the X in the corner to close out my preview. Now I can come back and I can just click here and select from the list. Now if I enter, it's going to drop me down to the next one. And at this point, I could say type in a plus mark because they've done better at recognizing basic vocabulary. And I can just go down the list, and if I do a square bracket to start, it's going to put that in for me. So it gives me the ability to go in and change what I've done for this student. Once I've finished with this student, I can click the collapse, the up arrow, and then I can go select another student to either review or see what they have. This apply default grade to all gives me the ability to use whatever is my default grade and apply it to all of the students in all of the skills. Now in this system, my default grade happens to be a blank because we want to force the teachers to select something. But that default grade could have been the check mark. It just depends on what the school opts to set up. Now if I hit the check mark or the square here, I can collapse or expand everyone. So I can look at everybody's grades and then be able to scroll up and down to verify what I'm putting in. Or I can check it again and actually uncheck it and collapse everyone. So that's one way to enter my skill grades. The next way is I'm going to go under skill grades, the view enter skill grades, and this time I'm going to do the skill in a grid. What that does is instead of going from one student in all of the skills, I'm now going to go from the skill and go to all students. So I've highlighted that I want to do my reading level, and I click on the View Enter Skill Grades. Now at this point, I'm going to get a list of all the students in the class, and I can again just click on the list and put in what level they're at, or I can right-click and I can assign the same grade to all. Now I do have that view select from allowed skill grades like I had when I did it from the student side, but what's nice with this assign same grade to all is it gives me the ability to go in and say, okay, I want to give everybody grade 2 as what level of reading they're at. Below that are two options. One is to assign grades to all, but I don't want to overwrite what's already there, which means that these two grade 3 levels are going to stay. If I said assign grades to all with overwrite, then I would overwrite those 3s and they would become 2s. So I'm going to go ahead and do the no overwrite. So it's going to go through and modify those. Now when it comes back, it'll have filled in the grade for all of those students, which makes it really handy. And at this point, I go to select new skill, and I can pick another skill that I want to work with, view enter, and come back in and work with those. So it makes it very nice to be able to put in the skills that I have here. And I can again assign the same grade to all, give everybody the check mark, do it with the no overwrite, and then work from there. Or I can say overwrite all, not worry about what was already there, and then change it afterward. So it modified it for 17 students. It put everybody with a check mark, and now I can come in and modify the ones that I'd like. Brandy made progress this time, and Joe isn't doing quite as well. So I can go ahead and modify what's here. The grid order by default is in student name order, but I can change it to homeroom, year of grad, or ID order. Now we're not having to show the ID at the moment, but it will shuffle the students and put them in that order. In either case, it's going to tell me how many grades are missing, what the overall average is for the class, and whether or not anyone is not evaluated, which means that it's either a blank or that the grade isn't there. So there is a difference where it's trying to make that determination. So those are two ways to put in the grades. We go in under reading instead of reading. If I want to go down to study habits, I'm going to show you another way to enter the grades. And in here, I'm going to go into the skill grades, the view enter grades, and this time I'm going to go down to the student list. In this case, I'm going to get a list of the students, and there's a button here where I can edit the grades. So if I want to go ahead and do that, and let's change this back to the student name order, I can go ahead and click on the student. And in this case, it's going to be a little bigger view than I had before. I can still put in the grades as I go down. So it just gives me that option to be able to come in. Now my skills are different because I'm now in my study habits. And as I scroll down, I can see more study habits that they're working on. And then when I get through with the study habits, I'm now going to come into the conference requested or promotion doubtful type of skill group. And I have here an area where I can put in a teacher note. And I can say how well Brandy's doing. And I can put that in. Now I can also hit the spell, and that's going to do a spell check for me. So it lets me know that it doesn't know who Brandy is, and I can say ignore that one, and that's going to say I'm not too sure what this, and yes, I can change it. And I can go ahead and say go ahead and change it. And that brings me back out, and I can continue going here. The next one's areas where I have a conference requested or a promotion is doubtful, and that's an area where I can put a double X in if I wanted to do a conference or not. So it's a different group depending on what I'm working with. At this point, I can go just straight into the next student, and it's going to bring up whoever is that next student, or I can do a new student from the list. So either of these are going to work. Now with those notes, the other thing, by the way, that I can do here that I couldn't do in the other two areas is I can actually go in and look at their report card just by clicking the little button that's in front of it that lets me preview that. So it just gives me a different way to be able to go in and look. If I go back into my skill grades and I do the skills by the skill here in the grid, if I was doing my notes, I could come in and say, oh, here's the teacher note. Let's go ahead and do the view enter. Now, because I put in a note for Brittany, it gives me an area where I can see that. And if I hover, I can see the name and I can see that, oops, I goofed a little bit. I put the name in as Brandy when I should have done it as Brittany. To change that, I just click on the note area. It's going to bring it up and I can double click and type in the correct name. Now you can highlight the area that's here and right click, and you can do a copy or a paste. So I could have a Word document elsewhere, come in here, right click and say I want to paste. So it does give me that capability to bring that in. And at the bottom, it's going to give me how many words and how many characters that I'm working with. And the reason it gives me this notification on words and characters is there might be a limitation on how many characters you're going to print on the report card. So having an idea here of how many characters is really going to help me try and keep my notes succinct. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I can continue working in with that. Now you can also see that note if I go back into the view enter grades by student, and it just becomes that it's in a different column. So if I click on Brittany again, I'm going to be able to see, and here's the note, so I can see what they've done so far. And again, if I hover over it, I'll see what that note is. So those are all ways that I can enter the skill grades. If I go in under the skill grades, there is also the ability to print a verification list. What that allows me to do is I can come in here for, in this case, my study habits, and I can say I want to see for the second term and go ahead, and now I could use my control key and print both first and second term. If I go ahead and print, it's going to print for these, and it's set up to do a new page for each student, so I can see what sort of grades I've put in so far. And as I go forward, I can see each student on their own page and see what sort of progress they've made. To change this to another course, I just go up to the top, click the course that I want to work with, so maybe I want to do math this time, and again see first and second term. And when I print, I'm going to be able to see for each student how I've scored. So it's a great way to see what I've done and see how well, did I miss somebody that, oh, I need to put in scores for Brittany here in math? And I can see the other information that's out there. So that's how you enter your skill grade in the teacher portal. We thank you very much and hope you found this helpful.